Right. Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. First of all, I want to let you know that this webinar is recorded and we'll share the recording with you afterwards. And then second of all, in the webinar, there's a chat section. If you go there, you can go ahead and type some questions for me during the webinar. And if there's anything that I can address, I'd be happy to during or after the demo of the product. With that, we'll get started. So, first of all, my name is Hai Nguyen. I'm co-founder of Affluence, the company behind Matrix. My goal today is actually pretty straightforward. I want to make sure that you get a good understanding of Matrix, and then also help you get the most out of it. Go ahead and change my slides here. I want to provide you a framework so then you can actually understand why Matrix works and what makes it powerful, and then help you envision what your work and life success may look like with Matrix. One thing I want to note is that at the end of the day, Matrix is a software to help you prioritize tasks and emails and ensure that everyone's on the same page. I've talked to thousands of customers over the years, and so what I want to make sure that you get out of this is the 20-80 rule. What are the 20% of capabilities inside Matrix that'll give you 80% of the value? Hopefully you're here today because you're interested in learning on how to be more effective at prioritization. And so when you walk away from this webinar, I hope that you'll be excited about it and that you can actually get started right away. So one of the things I always like to highlight are the challenges that customers face. So one of the first challenge that we see all the time is that team members have trouble understanding what's priority right now. And when I say that, what I mean is that we're working on so many different projects, and so it's hard to understand what are my coworkers considering to be their priorities. What are the status of that task, especially when you have so many areas of responsibilities. And then thirdly, emails and meetings are just causing far too much context switching. What I mean by that is that instead of having so many of these applications help us focus on our work, we're finding that we're actually constantly shifting and switching between applications. And so, you're jumping from emails to meeting software to chat software and then to your actual work. And so it's fascinating because this happens across the board. And so in the last couple of years, I think technology has really changed with respect to remote work, but at the same time, we're being inundated with action items and urgent tasks that are actually not very important at all. So one of the things that I want to highlight is actually how Matrix will help with each of these challenges. So to step back for 1 second, what Matrix is a comprehensive email, priority, and project management software to help teams manage emails, conduct more efficient meetings, and get real-time status of projects and priorities. Hopefully you have that understanding right now on what the software is. And at the same time, I'll talk about what the software is not, and hopefully you'll get some insight into how to make Matrix work well for you. So how does Matrix help with those challenges that I first talked about? We use something called the 4-quadrant methodology to promote effective prioritization. And so what that allows you to do is actually be able to understand exactly what needs to be worked on right now. And then secondly, Matrix provide views, different views, such as the one-on-one, the agenda, and the timeline to help you understand what needs to be done within the right context. And when I say right context, what I mean by that is if you're working, if you have a meeting with your manager, you want to understand exactly what it is that you're doing for him or her. And then vice versa. If you're delegating tasks to a direct report, you want to understand what are the things that's already on their plate. And then when you're just looking at your own to-do list, you want to understand what are the things that I'm working on? What else could I be working on? And then finally, Matrix provide really deep integrations into systems you already use. In particular, I'm going to highlight Microsoft Teams and Outlook because that's actually where we have a ton of integrations. We're probably the most integrated system in the Outlook and Teams ecosystem right now. So what makes Matrix better than existing solution? First of all, it's Microsoft 365 security certified across the web app, Outlook app, and Teams app. As far as I know, we're the only application with that status across all those applications. And then one of the things that we're doing is we're actually leveraging AI to help teams and individuals achieve their goals. In fact, just recently, Microsoft announced their Copilot and integration of Copilot, and we're actually the very first solution, one of the very first solution that has that status. So if your organization uses Microsoft Teams a lot and uses AI technology or trying to push the frontier there, Party Matrix actually will work with all of those things. And then we provide what's called people-centric collaboration. So in my view, it's not just about projects, right? When you want to work on something, you're not just trying to understand, okay, what do I need to do for this project? What you need to do is also understand, what do I need to do for this person? And then finally, Matrix is available as a standard SaaS software solution, a HIPAA compliant solution for healthcare life sciences, an Azure government cloud for state and local government, and then private deployments. So what makes Matrix effective is that it helps you understand what you need to do now, and then what you need to do later, and then what are the things you could delegate. So priorities are constantly shifting. Matrix offers the one place where your entire team can go to know exactly what needs to be done. So I want to make sure that this is a key takeaway here. This particular slide is that if you're using Matrix correctly, you're going to feel these. Bullet points being true. So if you're not seeing that, Party Matrix is helping you understand what needs to work on now, then you need to reconsider how you're using Party Matrix. And then if you are not seeing Party Matrix to be the one place where everyone can get alignment, that means you're not using it to its full potential. So keep that in mind. And to think about that too, what that means is that, if you're working on so many different projects with so many different team members, and if you're right now struggling with understanding what needs to be done, then that's what Matrix is for. So just want to make sure you understand that part. So let's talk about the fundamental of Matrix. And so there's a famous quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." What I really like about this quote is it helps us understand the dimensions of the work that we have to do. So for example, imagine if you work on something. Well, actually, imagine this morning when you first woke up, you open your computer or you look at your phone. What happened? You probably looked at your emails, and a lot of those emails aren't actually relevant, right? A lot of those emails are actually not important at all, and for me, at least, a lot of them are spam as well. And so, what happens is that there's this dimensions of important and urgency, and so the things that are constantly requiring our attention aren't always the thing that are actually most important. So what makes something important? Something important is something that actually helps you achieve your goals, whatever that may be. It could be your work goals, it could be your quarterly goals, it could be things that actually helps you meet your performance review. Whereas the things that are urgent are the things that are actually nagging at you. And so instead of actually just looking at a to-do list, what we want to do is we actually want to take everything that we have to do and split it into these two dimensions. So then what you have is the important and urgent, right? That's the stuff that's due now. You got to get that done. They're critical to your goals, and they're blocking somebody, etc. And then the things that are important but not urgent are the things that are in the plan quadrant. And so instead of having a one single list and having trouble deciding what to work on, Matrix asks you, and in fact forces you, to put the task into these various buckets. And so then it becomes extremely visual. And so when you look at your matrix, you're not looking at a to-do list, you're looking at to-do matrix. And so again, you have the things that are due now, and then the things that are to plan for. And then what about the things that are not important but urgent? Can you delegate that to somebody else? Can somebody else do a better job at that than you, or do a more efficient job, or do it so then take it off your plate so then you can focus on the top half of the quadrants? And then finally, you have your inbox, which is a popular way of thinking about, where do I start with all these tasks that I need to put down, right? You got to get it out of your brain, get it down on a piece of paper or inside Matrix, and that goes in the inbox. And then from the inbox, it goes into one of the other quadrants. So in a nutshell, Matrix is a software implementation of this particular philosophy. Now, Don't get me wrong, this is hard. In fact, I always emphasize that this is the hardest part about Protomatrix. And for all of you who are new to the software, or all of you who are new to time management or prioritizing your tasks, etc., you're going to find this exercise to be extremely difficult. But that's the point, because if you don't prioritize your tasks, you won't have a good understanding of what it is. And I spend a lot of time talking about the philosophy of Protomatrix, because at the end of the day, you could be approaching this in so many different ways. And there's a reason why you're here today. So I wanted you to keep that in mind. So the 4-quadrant Eisenhower Matrix create alignment because it forces you to prioritize from the beginning. And then this is the most fascinating part about all of this, which is if you take this party matrix with all your tasks and all your priorities, and you walk around the office and you start comparing notes, do you think that everyone else will agree with you? Would your manager look at your matrix and said, "Oh, I agree. Like, I agree everything in the Q1, everything in the Q2, Q3, and so on." And if indeed, when you walk around the office, everyone's aligned, then you're a unicorn in the sense that your organization knows exactly what it is they need to focus on, what are the things they need to execute, and you just got to go and work on it, right? But here's the interesting part. Success from using Protomatrix isn't necessarily about finding that alignment, because if you do have complete alignment, you don't need any software. But it's about discovering disagreements on what should be a priority when it isn't. And that's where the magic happens. So I would say that as you use Protomatrix, let's just say after this webinar, you start writing down your priorities, share that immediately with your manager or your key stakeholders or anyone else who actually have a say in your priorities, and see if you're in alignment. And it's sometimes obvious, but sometimes these are the things that we neglect to talk about. So that's the one exercise I would love for you to do. And if afterwards, you have any feedback there, to share with me, because I'd love to hear stories about it. As mentioned, the webinars are recorded, and so we'll post them on their website. The other thing I want to mention is actually today's webinar is introductory, but we have a couple of webinars coming up next week that dive further into the templating system and then very advanced technique in email management. So if you're interested, make sure you sign up for those. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump to the product. As I mentioned, if you do have questions, make sure that you send them in the chat, and I'd be happy to take a look at them and answer them as I go through the product here. Okay, so now I have the web app of Protomatrix open. As you can see, front and center is the 4 quadrants, right? So I have quadrant 1, the fires, the do now, the quadrant 2, do later, and then quadrant 3, I actually changed the name here, and then quadrant 4. So this is how it works inside Protomatrix. Inside Protomatrix, you have the concept of projects. And so you can think of projects as something like areas of responsibilities. You can think of projects as the things that you're actually working on, an actual project. You can think of project as a place just to categorize the various tasks that you have. As you can see, I have a couple of projects that's listed here. I have my team priorities. I have my personal priorities. And then within each of these projects that you select, in the middle, you have the 4 quadrants for all of those. And when you create tasks inside Protomatrix, it has to go within one of these quadrants. So now let me show you how it works when you create a task. So let's just say I have in my team priorities, I'm going to go ahead and create a task here. I'm going to say follow up with webinar participants. Okay, now the way it works in Protomatrix is when I create a task, the title here is the name of the task. But what I can also do is I can say due tomorrow at 2 p.m. And then I can decide if I need to delegate to somebody else or just delegate to myself. So if you use Protomatrix as an individual, then of course, everything that you create is delegated to you. But if you're using Protomatrix to work with multiple team members, then you can look at the delegation features as a way to actually set priorities for others. And so if you're a manager and you have multiple direct reports working with you, Protomatrix provide a one-stop shop to do all the delegation and then have one way to visualize and see everyone's priorities in a centralized location. So now I'm going to go ahead and leave the assignee to myself. I'm going to click add. And so as you can see, the task gets created here in Protomatrix. Now, when you create a task, on the right-hand side, the item details opens. And so what the item details is, it's a place where you can actually add additional context around the task. So for example, as I'm looking at this item details, here's the task name that I have. Next to it, I can do a couple of things. I can star the task. What starring does is it actually tells the system that, hey, this is an important task. And so it surfaces it to the very top of the list within the quadrants itself. And then below that, I can actually add an icon. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the email icon here. And then under that, again, I can see who's the owner. So when I create this task, I was the owner, right? And so this is my avatar here. But if I click on this, I can actually assign it to another person directly from here. And then I get added as a follower to this task. And then afterwards, you have progress, efforts, dates, and reminders. And so as you can see, the system automatically understood that comment that I wrote. I said due tomorrow, 2 p.m. So it set the due date for me. And so what's really neat about that is now I don't have to go and click on a button and set the date and so forth. But now here's a big difference between due date and reminders. You can think of due dates as when that task is due, but reminders is a way to actually surface it up prior to that due date. Let me give you an example. Let's just say, if you work on taxes and taxes is due in April 15th, but then if you wait until April 15th to get started, clearly you're not going to get that done. So you might want to set a reminder a month before that, right? And so then you can actually bring it up and actually spend some time working on that. So if you have something that takes time to get done, always set reminders beforehand. Now, let me step back for 1 second and give you some tips here because I use these two features all the time. In fact, almost every task that I create will have a due date as well as a reminder. The reason for that is to fight the importance and urgency aspect of everything. So I mentioned how when you first get started in the day, guess what? You're looking at your email and then you're seeing, a bunch of emails. Most of them may not be relevant. But imagine if you actually have an important task and then whenever you open your email, that important task is at the top of the list. Well, guess what? You're going to know and remember to actually get started on that. So the same thing works inside Prioritization. So the way it works in Prioritization is that when you set a due date, when that due date comes, it'll pop up in your alert section. But by setting reminders, it'll keep on popping up and actually remind you to get started on it. So here's how I like to do it. When I go down to the message here at the very bottom, I can say remind me daily. And when I type something like that, the text turned green and our system processes that for me. So now when I have an important task and I have a due date, it's going to remind me daily until I get this done. I love using this for things that are farther out. So sometimes I have to follow up with a customer a year from now. I would say due in 1 year and then remind me in 11 months. And then also I can do remind me weekly or remind me monthly to check in. And so use this capability to your advantage because that's one way to trick yourself into ensuring that you're spending time on the most important task. So anything that's important, those are the things I would do. Set due dates, set reminders, and star it. Now let's go down a little bit further. There's a couple of things here. You saw how I typed some messages in the chat. You can think of the chat as a conversation within the context of the task. So if you have multiple people involved within the task, then you can actually have a conversation with each other. And it's actually ensures that everyone is on the same page when it comes to the task itself, because everyone can look at it and have a conversation around it, but also see the history of all the changes. One of the challenges that I see over and over again is that people would use something like Microsoft Teams or emails as a way to communicate, but then they're talking about 5 or 10 different things, and you're switching context constantly. And then later on, a month or from now, you look back and you're like, wait a minute, what did we talk about? And then you have to search through all of your team's conversation to find out exactly the context that you were in. So by using Matrix chat here, you can have that conversation within the context of that task. And what's nice about that is when someone else joins the conversation, they get that full understanding of everything that you've talked about. So it's extremely powerful and it's really useful, and you have a full history of all that. And then you have the notes section, which is where you can add a little bit of notes around the task itself. This is where you can also add subtasks, and then resources. So you can think of resources as a place where you can attach documents or links relevant to the task. Example, Let's say you need to prioritize an email, right? Well, the email would be uploaded here into the file system. Or you can you want someone to review a website, then you actually put a link to it. Or you can also link Matrix tasks together, and that's how you build Gantt charts and timeline and so forth with Matrix. So that's how an item details, that's what the item details is all about. Essentially adding additional context just related to the task itself. So now let's talk about the projects. So as you can see, on my left-hand side here, I have a bunch of different projects, right? And so you can see how I have star projects, and the star project pop to the top of my list. And then below that, projects are ordered by modification dates. But you can also go to project list here and then show all projects. So this is a list of all my projects. So in my actual Matrix account, I have several hundred projects. But the one nice thing about Matrix is there's so many different ways to organize it. I actually don't get lost at all. By starting the appropriate project, I'm always on top of things. And then also because Matrix always surfaces up the project that I modified, I have really good visibility into the relevant project as well. But with the filter section, you can actually go and find the right project very, very easily. But let me show you how you add a project. So you click on Add Project here. Now, when you create a project in Matrix, you have several options. First, you can create a blank project. So if I click on blank project, I can literally just type in a project name, right? Maybe you're working on a construction site or a property, or you're working for a client and you need to create all the tasks for the client. That's the kind of stuff you would put here in the project name, or an initiative or something like that. And then below that, you can add some notes around the project, just if you want to add some details around it. And then you can associate it with a user group. You can think of user group as like departments. So for example, maybe you have a marketing project and you want to invite all the marketing people. That's what user group is for. Otherwise, you can actually manage the permissions, the access on a per project basis manually. And then you can choose a couple of basic templates. If you click on templates, you'll see that, we have 7 choices here that you can actually choose from: the basic Matrix, or the Eisenhower Matrix, or SWOT analysis, etc. And it's just renaming the project quadrants in a way that is relevant to you. And then finally, you choose the color. So I'll go ahead and just call this new test project here, and I'm going to add project. And as you can see, the project is created. And now when I first open this project, the right-hand side is replaced with the project details. I can also access that project details by clicking on this edit project right here. And so if I click on that, it opens the project details on the right-hand side. And this is where I can actually modify the information around the project itself. It's very similar to the way the item details works. I can start a project, then it'll pop to the top of my list. I can invite people to this project. And so earlier you saw how I delegated a task to somebody. Well, here I can invite somebody to a project and then give them access to the entire project. So what that allows them to do is actually see all my priorities, all my tasks. So let me give you a suggestion here. If you start Matrix today, go ahead and create a project called like a team priorities or something like that, or something where you actually want to have everyone that you work with all the time be on the same page. So you create that project and then invite the appropriate people, and then just tell them, hey, this is the place where we should write down all our priorities, and then have that as a central place. So when you're having a meeting, project this on the big screen and you can talk about your priorities in a much more effective manner. That's one of the uh, things I've seen customers do to fantastic success, which is to start their meetings by displaying the Matrix. And so then instead of actually, going through a linear list of action items, you're focusing on the things that are most important, right? And how many times have you gone through a meeting and, you're going through your agenda and then you're out of time, and guess what? The most important task that you have is at the bottom of the list and you never got to it. And so you just wasted a ton of everyone's time. And so by using Matrix as just the basis of having that conversation, you can ensure that you focus all your conversation on quadrant 1, right? And then afterwards, quadrant 2. And then, if anything, you can actually cancel the meeting, or finish the meeting early without having to go through the stuff that's not important. So that's one thing that I do suggest that you do with Matrix. Have the appropriate team members within those projects. Now, what's neat about these quadrant names too is actually they're completely customizable. So earlier in my presentation, I talked about the do now, do later, delegate as the basic quadrant names. But guess what? In Matrix, you have infinite flexibility. The reason we have this is because everyone works in different ways, and every project is different. So as you can imagine, some projects, instead of having a delegate, maybe instead you want to change it to resources or files, or documents or something like that. And then instead of having quadrant 4 as inbox, maybe you want to have it as just a repository of everything that you have to do. And so you can actually customize Party Matrix and just change this. And so you can think of the quadrant as a way to describe two different dimensions, right? So for example, effort impact. Quadrant 1 might be low effort, high impact. Quadrant 2 might be high effort, high impact, etc. So use that to your advantage and rename the quadrants to whatever names that make sense within your organization, especially if you have a methodology in place. And then also within each quadrant, you can actually click on here and change the color. What I like to use the color for is actually color code my projects. So for example, maybe all marketing projects are actually some color, one color. Or if you have a lot of projects for different types of clients, external clients that you work with, then you can have those different projects as well. So use the colors as an easy way to organize the information. So then when you look at the list of projects on the left-hand side, it's so easy for you to see what are the projects that are impacted. Okay, so that's the project details. There's a couple of things in here that I want to highlight, but we'll get back to it after we're going to switch gears right now to talk about emails. The reason I want to talk about emails is that's actually probably the number one reason why people come to Matrix, which is looking for a better way to prioritize email. Now, as I mentioned, I get hundreds of emails per day. Sometimes it is very, very difficult to stay on top of it. So I, like you, probably flag emails. And so when you get an email that's important, guess what? You flag it. The problem I have is I have hundreds of flag emails. And so when I flag them all like that, it's impossible for me to go back and decide which one I need to work on. So the way it works in Matrix is actually I can take any email and convert it into an actual Matrix task. And it is so useful because I can set due dates and reminders. I can delegate the email, etc., which is so much more powerful than what the basic email application can do for you. So let me give you an example here. Let's just say now I'm in Outlook, Outlook for web, but Matrix for Outlook works in all versions of Outlook, which means desktop, mobile, etc. And so here I have an email. And so when I go to Matrix, if you haven't already, you click on apps and then add apps and search for Matrix and install it. Then you just sign in with your Matrix account and everything will be synced. Of course, I've already done that. So for me, when I have an email open, I can just click on that apps and then click on Matrix. And when I do, I have two choices. I have the option to open Matrix or the option to prioritize email. I'll go ahead and choose prioritize email. Now the right-hand side will open up and it allows me to turn any email into a task. And so you can see how I have the option to capture the email, the subject itself become the item name. So again, this is a way for me to remember what this task is all about. I can choose what project it goes in. Now, this is where it's really useful. Imagine if you have an email from a particular client. Well, guess what? You can go and organize it within that project for the client, and then you can choose what quadrant it goes in, right? And so now every email is very, very organized into the appropriate context. And then not only that, every email has a priority level next to it. And that just ensures that you're always on top of it. And so again, focus your time on all the stuff that's important and urgent. So then all the emails with that in that quadrant 1 is right there for you to see or everyone who's involved to see, and you know that you can focus on that. Down in the owner section, I can actually delegate this email to another coworker as needed, which is very useful because if I just forward an email to somebody, again, I can't set due dates. I don't know if they're going to read it. I don't know if there's a way to remind them. And if the work is done, I have no way to track it. So if you are just forwarding email left and right, I'm sure you're challenged by that right now. So the way Matrix works is by delegating the email to somebody and prioritizing it, you ensure that everyone's on the same page. It is extremely helpful, especially if you have a lot of forwarding that you got to do. And then, of course, like I said, a due date. So again, I'm going to go ahead and set a due date here. And with that, I click capture email. And as you can see, The moment I do that, the right-hand panel here becomes an item details, right? I have the item name again. I can star it as needed. You see how it's already assigned to the appropriate person and the due date's already set. And that's how I've converted an email to a task. And then imagine if this email was very important, I would say remind me weekly, right? And so what that does then is it reminds me to actually work on this email on a weekly basis until I get it done. This is very useful if you have something that's not, that you can't respond to right away. Because of course, if it's an easy email to respond to, go ahead and do it. You don't have to prioritize anything. But if the email is something that you can respond to in 2 weeks, this is the most powerful way to do it. Now, a couple things that's neat about Prioritization that's unlike any other email add-in that you have, which is Prioritization also allows you to actually attach emails to existing tasks. So again, let's go back to that same example. I have an email open, and I click on here. I choose Prioritization. Now, instead of prioritize email, I open Prioritization. What this allows me to do is actually attach this email to an existing task. And so you can see how I go here, Pretty Matrix opens here. I can search for the item name and then go ahead and attach that email to an existing task. Again, you might have multiple emails from the same person relevant to one task. You don't want to go and create, multiple tasks. And then at the same time, again, you can't go and forward that email to people. That's going to create a huge mess. And so Pretty Matrix allows you to organize all that and attach emails to an existing task instead. So that's how Prioritization email integration works. There's a couple of other things that's really neat is that Prioritization also has an inbox address for you. So what that allows you to do is you can forward an email to yourself. And so I use this all the time, by the way. When I'm on my phone, I'm out and about, and I'm on my mobile device, I get an email, and then I'm on Apple Mail, and now what I want to do is I want to forward that email into my Prioritization and then set a due date for me. So it allows me to go back when I go back to my desk to the look at my computer. I can actually get to that email and respond to it. So let me jump back to Prioritization here to show you how that worked here. So you see how that email was created right here for me. And then when I go to the resource section, you see that that email file was uploaded. Now my coworker who got assigned this email can open the email and respond to it. And so that's actually a really powerful way to ensure that your most important emails are actually addressed. Now, Prioritization has a couple of other views aside from the quadrant view. So we talk about the quadrant view as a very good way to see priorities. Now, if you go to the very top here, you can actually switch to what's called the list view. The list view shows all the items that you have in a list. What I like to use this view for is actually to sort by due dates. So any task that's overdue, they're red. And so it's very easy for me to see the tasks that are overdue. I can sort by people, by name, by modified date and due date, etc. And then the calendar view is useful if you want to see what are the things that's coming up in the short term, right? So for example, I have tasks here at different time, due at different time, different days. I can actually easily see within the context of this project what are the things that's going to be due soon and who's assigned to. In fact, I can actually just drag and drop and reprioritize things very, very easily. Now, of course, only tasks with due dates would show up here in the calendar view. And then finally, you have the Gantt chart view. And so the Gantt chart view takes all the action items that you have with due dates and actually display them in a timeline view. And this is useful if you want to look at the very big picture across months. So sometimes you have a very big project with dozens or hundreds of tasks, and then within them, you might actually have dependencies and also things that are spanning across multiple days or months or weeks. Prioritization allows you to actually see all of that, and actually you can click on each of these and be able to open the task around that. One thing that's really nice is actually, again, the interface is drag and drop. So actually I can actually change the due date and start date directly from here. And Prioritization will actually track all the changes for you. That's a key part of Prioritization, which is to have a good audit trail. That allows everyone on your team to understand who changed what and when they changed it, and then what it was changed to. So that's how it works with the various views inside Prioritization. And so I can go back to the quadrant view here. Now let's talk about some customization capabilities. Let's just imagine for a second that you start Prioritization and then you create a project that with recurring tasks. When I say recurring task, I mean something like it's something that you have to do every time you onboard a new customer, for example. And let's just say you create a Party Matrix, and within that, you have these 10 things that are important and urgent for the customer, the 10 things that are important but not urgent for the customer, and then you have the various due dates around it. And every time that you onboard a new customer, you launch that project. Party Matrix actually allows you to use templates as a way to save you time and effort here. So for example, let's just say from this particular project, let's say I make all my changes and create all my tasks. What I can do then is click on here and then choose, I'm sorry, go to project here, open project details, click on the ellipsis, and then choose save project as template. This allows you to actually save that entire project as a template. And then when you onboard a new client or new customer or new employee, you can actually launch a project from template instead. So let me show you how to do the other versions of adding projects. So earlier you saw how we create a blank project, right? Now if I go to my all project here, I'm going to add project. So instead of using a blank project, I would just simply go to my templates. And now I can actually choose an existing template that I've created, and it'll save me a ton of time having to recreate any of those things. In fact, one of the things that we've also done is actually created some public templates for you that you can use. And so these are just ideas that we have over years on various ways to use Party Matrix. And so if sometimes you want to get started really quickly using something that's a non-Eisenhower matrix, that's how you would do it. And then you also have the option to create with AI. What this does, the create with AI, is actually one of the new things that we've added. What it does is help you achieve your goals. So all you have to do is go to create with AI, type in your goal here, and then create a Party Matrix project. And we'll actually generate action items, suggestions, as well as task and timeline to help you meet those goals. So if you get a chance, play with it and see if it actually can give you some good suggestions on how to get started. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my project here. And so as you can see, this is the web app. So now let's switch gear and talk about the Teams app. So obviously you don't need Microsoft Teams to use Party Matrix. As you can see, you just use the web app. We also have the desktop app and so forth. But if you do use Microsoft Teams, definitely install Party Matrix for Teams, because it's probably the most integrated solutions in Teams. Let me show you how it works. Go ahead and go to the App Store, search for Party Matrix, and then afterwards, when you open Party Matrix, it actually shows up here on the left-hand side. Right-click on it to pin it, and when you pin it and you click on Party Matrix here, see how this view looks just like the web app. So what we've just done is pretty much pull in the entire web application into Teams, and now you don't even have to open a browser and switch context. Everything here is very similar to the web app. So in terms of the interface, item details, project details, and so forth, there's a couple of changes that's different. The menu is hidden up here. And then also you have this thing called the home view. And with the home view, you can actually get all those alerts that we talked about. So how does Party Matrix handle this concept of ensuring that you work on the right thing is through the alert system. So what that means is that when you have something that's due, it shows up here. When someone delegates you a task, it shows up here. When a task that you follow is updated, it shows up here. So when I start my day, this is, by the way, where I like to start. I like to start in the alert section, look through the task here to see if there's anything that's relevant to me. I can click on each of these. It opens a project, the item details. I can go through it. And then when I'm done, or when I don't want to need to review anything else, I can clear all the alerts, and I can also clear alerts older than a week or older than a day, right? And then I have a blank slate. And now as items changes, it pops back here for me again. If you set recurring reminders, like I showed you previously, like, remind me daily, remind me weekly, it'll keep popping up here in the alert section until you get that task done. And that's how you trick yourself into ensuring that you're always working on the most important thing. Because more often than not, we treat important tasks the same as non-important tasks, right? We set a due date, or we write it down, but to overcome the tendencies for us to focus on urgent things, you have to do that due dates, you have to do that reminders, and Party Matrix will ensure that you're working on those things. Now, let me show you a couple features that's unique inside Teams. So when you use Teams, for example, you might have a chat section with somebody. So, you might communicate with your coworkers or your managers or something like that. Party Matrix has this thing called the one-on-one. What it does, it actually shows you everything you have in common with that person across your entire Party Matrix. So when I talk about people-centric collaboration, That's what the one-on-one is for. The one-on-one is a way to actually look at all your tasks from a very different lens. Instead of having to browse through each project and see the things that you're working on, the one-on-one ensures that you're looking at the task for that person. So when you have a one-on-one with your manager, for example, you open up the one-on-one view inside Matrix or inside Teams here. You can see all the things that you're working on that your manager assigned you, or that you're a follower where your manager's assigned, and then you can see all the tasks that are modified and due across all projects. And when you need to create a new task, you just click on Add Share Task, and then both of you are added to that task from the get-go. This will save you a ton of time in your meetings. And not only that, what I like about it is that, it takes away the excuse where someone will go and say, oh yeah, we talk about that, during the meeting, but I never wrote it down, right? With Matrix, you can actually add that shared task so easily, and then the relevant stakeholders also added to the task. So I love this feature. I use it not every day, but I use it whenever I need to find out, whether or not someone's been working on something, or I need to delegate it to somebody really, really easily. Now, to get to this one-on-one view, you just click on the plus icon here and then choose Matrix, and then choose the one-on-one. And when you do that, you can actually select the person. One thing, if you like the one-on-one feature, you can add the one-on-one to every single person that you work with, right? So all your direct reports, for example, go through your direct reports in the chat here, add the one-on-one for each of them. Now you have one central place to see what they're working on, the status of their task, if they're working on things or if things are overdue, and then you can actually talk about it. So what happens is that sometimes you assign someone a task in Matrix and they may not see it. So with Matrix, you can also add these things called action cards and share that directly in Teams. So as you can see, I can actually click on this, click on Matrix, and then I can actually share a Matrix task directly inside Teams, and it shows up as a panel, as an action card like this. So my use case here, I use this whenever I assign someone a task and then I see that, crickets, didn't hear anything from them. So to ensure that they see the task, I go here and I assign them, or send them this action card. The reason why you want to send them an action card as opposed to just telling them about it is that it allows them to click on view item and open it and then update it and mark it as done. Right, the key to using Matrix is to ensure that everyone's on the same page. So you don't want to go and create additional, places where people are looking and they don't know what tasks they need to work on. So by sending an action card and they update it, you just have one central place to track all of that within the context of the task. Because if you just send them a message and they respond to that message, guess what? If someone else needs to look at the task, they won't see that message that you've sent to another person. So by having all the conversation and communication inside the Matrix action card, you can actually ensure that everyone's on the same page. Now, Matrix has multiple integrations that I'm not going to go into, but we integrate into your Teams meetings as well. And then also, in fact, if you use Matrix, you use Teams a lot, and you go to Works with Copilot and you open this, you'll see that Matrix is one of the very, very few applications that works with Copilot. And then if you go to workflows, Matrix is one of the very few applications that has automations with workflow as well. Bunch of very powerful capabilities that's beyond the scope of this webinar, but I want you to recognize that Matrix has a lot of power and potential as you expand it beyond your personal use case. And then the other thing I want to show too is actually, if you look at Matrix here, you can actually also go to our, let me see here. I can't open it at this moment, but we also have additional connections into other applications, such as Planner, To Do, Jira, etc. And you can go to the connectors page in order to set those things up. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump back to my presentation, and then afterwards, I'll take a look to see if there's any questions that others you may have. So if you have any questions, go ahead and send in the chat, and then I'll start reviewing it real soon. Go back to the presentation here. I want to wrap things up by saying that it is now up to you to actually get started with Matrix, because, despite being a priority management software, there's only so much we can do. And so to actually get the most out of Matrix, you definitely should create 3 projects. That's my threshold, my minimum threshold. One for your personal priorities, one for your share team priorities, and then one for some sort of key initiatives that you're working on. The goal here is to make sure that whenever you log into Matrix, you see the status of tasks, right? And you know these are the things that you should be working on. And so invite the appropriate team members and then pitch to them why it's important to focus on high impact tasks. Now, this is not easy because a lot of team members, sometimes fight back against the idea of using a software to track priorities because they're like, no, why are you asking me to do that? But here's the thing. If they can track their priorities in Matrix, it helps everyone be on the same page. And so then, it ensures that no one's working on the wrong things, first of all. But then second of all, if you're the manager and you're assigning people tasks, you know what's on their plate, right? If they have too much on their plate, you can't go and assign them more things. And so when you use Matrix and you use that quadrant 1 and you're looking at it, my recommendation is never have more than 25% of your task in quadrant 1, because if everything's important and urgent, then nothing is. So keep that in mind. And so you can pitch to your team members that, look, it's a way for me to also see what are the things you're working on to ensure that I don't overload you with work, which is, I think, a very powerful way to think of what Matrix can do. And then when you create tasks in Matrix, set due dates, set reminders, and then make sure you put them in the appropriate quadrants. And then finally, what I say here is ruthlessly prioritize. What that means is that if you don't prioritize these tasks, you will not get to alignment. And so you have to prioritize your time or someone else will, right? A couple of advice, use Matrix to track high impact tasks initially. So if you're very, very new to Matrix and you worry about, tracking too many things, keep it high level. And so that allows you to focus on the things that really matter. And then think of Matrix as a communication tool to help everyone stay aligned, right? And I love the customers who project Matrix on the big screen because it is such a powerful way to be aligned with others. And so if you do this, let us know how it works for you and whether or not you're actually getting meaningful discussions. We're always interested in understanding better ways to make Matrix work well for our customers. And then use Matrix to manage your individual goals as well. I talked a lot about the teams and team management and delegation and so forth, but the core of Matrix is around the individual. And so the fact that you're listening to this webinar either now or on the recording shows that you actually are really interested in becoming more effective at prioritizing your task. And for us, we understand that at the end of the day, it starts at the individual. If we can help you succeed, then everything else will just fall into place. So what success with Matrix should look like: you have one central place to track all priorities. Everyone in the teams understands and are aligned on key tasks, and so you know what to work on and what not to work on. Repetitive procedures are templatized. So again, if you have the workflow, things that happen over and over again, save it as a template. And then if you have important emails, prioritize them with Matrix. This will be so useful and ensures that your most important emails are not falling through the cracks and that you can triage the emails to appropriate team members. That's it. With that, I conclude my introduction to Matrix here. I'm going to take a look at the comment to see if there's any questions. All right, I see a question here. Can PM help me keep up with updates on different tasks? So that's a great question. And I think that what you're saying here is that you're getting updates and messages across so many different platforms, and now you're not able to pull that into Matrix. So the way Matrix works is that it's intended to be that central place where you get the status updates. But if if your team members are actually sending you messages from other platform, that's exactly why you actually have to talk to others and convince them to actually use a platform like Matrix to have a central place. So let me give you a couple of ways to get around that. One, let me go ahead and open up back up here. So let's just say if you have a particular task, right? Let's say, you have this task and now someone sends you an email with a status update. What you would do is, if they send that status update for you by email, what you would do is go ahead and open the email. and then choose the option Party Matrix here, and then open Party Matrix, and then attach this email to that particular task. So now you have all these updates centralized into one place. Now, when it comes to a Teams message, what you can do is actually, you can click on this ellipsis here, and you can actually choose copy link. So it turns out that inside Teams, every comment and every conversation actually has a link associated with it. So let's just say, you see here, someone says, hi there, could you send me a report? I can do a couple of things. I can actually click on this ellipsis, and I can create a Party Matrix task directly from here. I don't even have to jump into Party Matrix, right? I can actually create the task from here, or I can actually copy this link and then go back to Party Matrix and then paste that. So Party Matrix will actually automatically will allow you to actually incorporate anything with links in it into one central place. And then if you have, SharePoints or drives or whatever, Party Matrix has 2 additional integrations inside Edge as well as Chrome, the Chrome extension and Edge extension, that allows you to convert any web page and attach it to an existing task. And so if you have a SharePoint drive, that a SharePoint document that is associated with a particular task, you can do that using the Party Matrix Chrome and Edge extension. It's also very helpful, if you have other web applications that you want to actually put into Party Matrix. So when you talk about the latest status of tasks, that's also one of those things where there's no way Party Matrix can actually pull in all the conversations relevant to that task. But the idea of actually putting your action items and putting your notes and so forth in Party Matrix, and then updating the progress and updating effort and reviewing the chat, that's how you get the latest status of each task. So let me give an example of how I like to do it. When I look at a task inside Party Matrix, right? So when I start my day, I would first go to the home view. And then from the home view, I'm getting alerts on all the tasks that have been changed. And then when I click on the task here, in the chat section, that's usually where I see status update for this particular task. So if someone made a comment, or if someone attached a document, or someone moved the progress bar, or create a subtask, or finish a subtask, or change the due dates and reminders, all of that is displayed here within the comments for that task. So that's how you get to know the latest status of the task through this timestamp on the item. I don't know if that answered your question well enough, because I do think it sounds like, the challenge that you face is actually just having so many different forms of communication. But the goal of Party Matrix is to actually bring all those communication together. So then you're not having, so many different places where you're tracking all these different tasks. Feel free to reach out to us if you need more suggestions too. Thanks for that. Are there any other questions? If not, I do want to let you know that, feel free to reach out to me, hi@affluence.com or support@affluence.com. We always want to hear from you. We want to understand your needs and use cases. Party Matrix is very adaptable. We're actually building user guides to actually guide you through using Party Matrix for your very, very specific use case. So if you have a specific use case, please reach out to us, and we'd be happy to send you one of those user guides. And then secondly, as mentioned, we have a couple of other webinars as well that covers other topics. But I hope that when you walk away from today's meeting, what you do is create those projects that I mentioned. Start prioritizing tasks, start delegating to others, start sharing this, your priority list with your manager and direct reports and so forth. And then when you do, you'll find that Party Matrix will help identify the things that you should be working on and the things you shouldn't be working on. And if we can save you time and effort by ensuring that you don't work on the wrong things, then I think, Party Matrix will generate all the value it needs to. So thank you for attending today's webinar. Appreciate your time.